Friday. Welcome back, everyone. If it is your first time joining me, my name is Lauren Sermon, and this is Friday Live with Lauren, where I bring on a fun guest every week. I am super excited about our guest today. Landon Hobbs is going to join us. I'm going to bring him on in a minute. But it is Friday. It is 3 p.m. Eastern. Congratulations. You made it another week. It's about to be the weekend. Relax, take a load off, come learn a little bit with us, and let's have a little fun too. I think we're going to talk about beards on LinkedIn today. Landon, you think we're going to talk about some beards?
I think we might talk about some beards.
Yeah,
I think the topic of beards is good to have always.
I mean, I wish, I have the beard jealousy already. I just want to do this in the air and stroke my pretend beard. So y'all, if you are joining us, one, drop in the comments where you're from. And two, if you have a beard, let's do hashtag Beard Friday or something. Let's get it going.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me, and tell the audience a little bit about Landon.
I'm so excited to be here, Lauren. So excited. So I'm Landon Hobbs. I have been in sales and doing fun job things for the better part of 18 years. Love trying to help people. I suffered from interview paralysis back in the day, and it was always one of those things that I wish my dad did a better job at teaching me. And so now that I'm in dad mode, I want to be a dad to all of you. And so I just try to help people. Kind of go through the suffering that I went through. I want to make sure that I absolve that with people here. So
yeah,
quite a ride.
Y'all, just full transparency, you all know I'm a recruiter, okay? I found Landon on LinkedIn when I was recruiting for a role, and I reached out to Landon, and he was one of those people. He wasn't an asshole. He was polite. We had a conversation. Even though it wasn't the role for him, we kept in touch. We formed this friendship. It is possible. Recruiters aren't scary, y'all. Look, we got somebody joining us with no beard. I feel you, Jonathan Lee. Me too. I have the beard envy today. We got people joining us from Berlin. Landon, look at that. We got some good people on here.
Damn.
Hello. Look, Logan says that is a beard. Lean in, Landon. Let us see.
I grew it myself.
Yeah. There we go.
No.
And then him, I shaved my beard last week. That's okay, Kobe. You can grow it back and try again. And not having a beard doesn't make you a lesser man. It just means that you get to start over. And I always tell people, maybe your beard was patchy, shave it. Maybe it'll grow back a little bit thicker. Who knows?
Yeah, the beard does not define the man. The beard is just another form of, hey, here is the representation of my discipline, and that's all it is. And if you decide you want to grow a beard, it doesn't make you any more of a man, any less of a man. So we all go at our own lengths, our own time.
I love it. It is discipline. I never thought about it that way, but it really is discipline. So there, Sharon, thank you, Sharon, for telling me I'm not scary. I appreciate that. Some days I disagree with that statement. I know some days I worry about that myself, but we have some hot topics, y'all. We're going to jump into it. And one of the big ones that I know a lot of my network wants to talk about is what's going on with interviews, do's, don'ts. What are we doing? Landon is actually currently interviewing right now. And fun fact, Landon is so good at this that when I used to have AEs interview, oh, don't shake your head at me. I would have AEs literally reach out to Landon for advice when Landon was in his last role. So I really mean it when Landon was like, let's talk about interview do's and don'ts. I was like, you are the one. I might be a recruiter, but Landon's living on the other side of this. So you guys are going to get some great knowledge from Landon. Let's jump right into it. So tell me right now what you're experiencing in interviews, and then we'll jump into the do's and don'ts.
Yeah. And I think when we're talking about interviews, I think one of the biggest challenges that candidates run into is that it's just a super scary climate right now. It feels very disheartening whenever you're trying to submit applications, and it feels like you're just going through this gauntlet of emotions. And what I can tell you first and foremost is that you're not alone. Interviews are one of these things where it's a skill. And I've spoke with a ton of people, whether they're these top sales performers, they're these entry-level folks, and there's just a lot of misconceptions about how to approach interview processes. And I'll let you know, it doesn't need to be this big, scary thing. At the end of the day, you're still dealing with another person, and this other person is just like you.
Yep.
And so I feel it's important that when you approach interviews, that you maintain the mindset of this is an equal business stature. It's not just me just interviewing you. You are interviewing me because we are people of value. Yeah. So it's important that when I'm approaching the interviewer, doesn't matter what title they are, that title does not define the person. Where you are in your life, that journey, the struggle, you're not insignificant. So you don't need to take their bullshit just because they happen to have some money they want to flag you with.
100%.
Yeah. So,
100%. Y'all, that is gold. People, if you're getting put through the ringer in an interview process, right? I talked to somebody today who in the second interview, the company still wouldn't share some like key pieces of information with them. And they were like, well, this is relevant to know if I want to take the job. And the company wouldn't budge. And my recommendation to that person is get out of that interview process. You are just as valuable, if not more, because they need you right now, right? So I love that advice, Landon. That's great advice.
yeah. And I think too, like, especially when we're talking about SDRs, AEs, sales advice, it's really important that you understand, like, hey, are you going to give me the tools that I need to be able to do my job effectively? This is what I really focus on. I want to make sure that there's a degree of enablement. What are you bringing to the table? Walk me through what the leadership is like. How are the leaders coached within your organization? More often than not, we get into these conversations where leaders expect you to basically be at the end of the finish line. That's what they're waiting on. They look at that person, evaluate that person, and all of your struggles, all of your history is summed up in this tiny little paragraph on a tiny piece of paper called your resume. And it doesn't allow us to be able to really, it doesn't reflect who I am as a person, right? So I have to ask these questions to make sure that I'm not walking into another steaming pile of garbage, right? So I want to find out, tell me about the founders, walk me through how are you enabled? What are you going to do to help me be successful? What's that ramp time look like? I think that one of the biggest challenges that candidates go through is they're so focused on the dollar that they fail to acknowledge the other assets that go into the job, right? You got to look at your mind. What is my mental health going to look like? I actually quit a very cushy job with Zoom Info. Paid me a lot of money. I was making $200,000 a year. That money does not reflect my happiness, though. And you have to really dissect and take under a microscope where that culture is actually going to, where you belong. You don't want to work in a culture that's filled with micromanagement. You don't work in a culture where it feels that you're constantly being led with fear, and it's just not fun. So when we're going into that, you want to make sure that you feel safe. And so it's important that you're asking those questions. Don't be afraid to push back. Don't be afraid to ask those harder questions.
And 100%. And your point about the money, right? I saw this thing today. The average average income or salary is like 65K in the US right now. Okay. That's what average people are making. Obviously we're all shooting for the six-figure number, right? But the top 1%, they're making about $450,000 a year in the USA right now. Okay. We don't really think of people as made it, right? Until they're a millionaire. If you had $1 million, so like, how many people are actually making 100K and pretty happy and their mental health's okay? And they're not actually getting into these situations where they're not being supported. The money doesn't necessarily matter as much as the overall feeling of the job. Are you fulfilled, right? Do you have enough money to pay your bills? Are you only striving for that private plane? I don't know about you, Landon. I don't need a private plane to be happy in my life, right? Like, that maybe that's something that some people on this listening to this, maybe you're not going to get value from this, but realistically, you don't have to strive for that. And if you're in an interview and it's not going well, or that person's not being like authentic with you, you got to think about that too. Just because they're waving a lot of money at you doesn't mean that that's where you should go. And if you're only in it for the money, you're not going to end up happy in that job.
Yeah, and I think this is one thing too, and it's a huge contradiction to most people's paradigm. Is the most important question that we all ask, and it's the one that we all lead with, is what is the salary and on-target earnings? And we ask that question, and while it is a great factor, you have to have money to live. I've got to be able to pay my bills. I have to be able to support my family. That's not the only thing that matters. The way that I was able to raise my floor was by challenging that perception. I increased my salary worth and my worth as a person by not solely making my decision based on the money. If that's what you do, you're in a constant chase of the carrot. I'm constantly chasing that carrot that's on the stick. And while that money may bring momentary relief to your situation, there's a saying, money solves money problems. It doesn't actually fix the real root of the cause of what's going on. If you're lonely, money isn't going to solve that. You have to do other things outside of money, right? I don't get. There's just so much more that goes into that. So my number one advice is don't just look at the money. You have to look at the bigger picture. Otherwise, you're going to go job hunting, to job to job to job, same bullshit every time, and that's not going to be helpful for anybody.
100%. And just like your resume doesn't tell a full story about you guys, the job description doesn't tell a full story about that company. That one person you're talking to is not the full story. So you have to dig deep. You have to protect yourself. This isn't just something you're doing for fun. This is your job. This is your career. This is going to be your life. So you really, really have to dig in and interview them as well. I think that that's my biggest thing right now. When I talk to a lot of people who are in job interviews, they just need a job. I just need this job, Laura. I just need this job. I feel you and I feel that. But at the same point, you have to look out for yourself, right? And you have to dig deep, so that Landon said, so that you're not back here in a year talking to Lauren again, figuring out what we're doing next, right? Okay, we do have a bunch of questions. Let me pull up some questions. Nina says next week she's got her third interview with HR, CEO, and the technology manager. Landon, what value questions do you think she should ask to that level of leader?
Yeah, so I would want a little bit more information, particularly on what the actual role entails. But I think, again, it trails back to not only are we talking about the types of questions that we're going to be asking, I want to find out about the leadership, what the direction of the company is going to be going into. I want to make sure that I'm going to be supported correctly, what type of enablement is given to us. The thing you have, and like, let's be honest for a second, ask the questions that you care about, right? Don't be afraid to, like, if you care about benefits, ask about benefits. If you care about, well, what type of support is going to be given to my child for the type of child care can I expect? If you work from home, what kind of things are they going to do to support your home? You have to ask these questions, and don't be afraid to ask the questions you care about. So the tip that I'm going to give you is not so much a fact about what type of questions that you want to ask. It's about framing that I'm a person of value and asking the questions that matter. Because again, it's a two-way. It's a two-way interview. You interview me, I interview you, and we go that way. What I want you to do, Nina, is I want you to approach it as you were a person of value when you step into that interview, though. Do not allow them to bully you. Do not allow them to assert dominance over you. You are a human being at the end of the day. And I want you to go into that interview with a positive mindset. You belong there. You deserve to be there. And that's the advice I'm going to give you, as opposed to asking very specific questions, because I don't know if that's necessarily going to be helpful.
I love that. And Nina, if you want to DM me, I also have a interview prep guideline. I'm happy to share with you. Anybody watching, if you guys need an interview prep document, out to it. It talks about questions and things like that. All right, we got one from Paul. Do you see the interview process as a bigger hurdle in the hiring process compared to getting picked for an interview?
I think, so let's kind of talk about that. So whenever we're talking about like the landscape of applicants, if you are solely relying on this passive search where you're submitting applications and you're putting in applications where there's literally hundreds of people that are also vying for the same job, you're playing a losing game. If you're really, truly trying to step out, you've got to be willing to take a proactive approach. So what does that mean? That means that I'm going to go and I'm going to apply on LinkedIn. I'm going to apply on Indeed. I'm going to go on the company's website. I'm going to apply there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to reach out to those hiring managers. I'm going to go to the manager, the director, the VP, whoever the fuck I need to talk to. And I'm going to send them a message. If they have their phone number on there, I'm going to give them a call. Yes, that means that you've got to be able to pick up the phone. But in this economy where it is so competitive, you cannot rely on just your resume, which, by the way, most people's resumes aren't that good. Have your resume looked at. Get somebody to go in there and seriously look at your resume. And you have to look at, is my resume actually good? So give it in front of your recruiter. right? Go find a recruiter and ask them, pay them for that time because it will pay off in dividends. I promise you. That's how you stand up. Second part of it, last thing, is the actual interview process a bigger hurdle? Again, I think getting the interview is the hardest part. Once you got the interview, the easiest part, in my opinion, is selling yourself. Selling yourself should be the easiest thing. If this is the hard thing, you got bigger problems. That's just me though.
I agree with you. I think that once you get the interview, you're over the biggest hurdle so far, right? Like getting in the interview right now is hard. My only other tip I want to add to Landon's about how you reach out to all these people is also reach out to people at the same level for the role you're applying for so that they can champion you in as well, right? Make those connections with the same level people as well, because just reaching out to the hiring managers won't always work for you. Sometimes it will, but sometimes it won't. And also make sure you're reaching out to the actual hiring manager and not just the people in HR. Sometimes that person in HR has no idea about the role or what actually it entails. And if your resume isn't perfect or really explains what you can do, you will get a stupid auto rejection from someone in HR who doesn't understand. So please, please, please be mindful that you're actually reaching out to the right people. Okay, we have another one. How do you deal with ageism? How do you personally deal with it in interviews? Landon, do you feel like you deal with ageism?
So I work in software, and I think that I would be remiss to say that it's not something that I'm going to eventually be discriminated against. When we talk about ageism, so my dad's in his 60s, he deals with it all the time. He started to get a gray hairs on his beard. Actually, he does have gray hairs on his beard, so he has to shave his face. Unfortunately, people are going to discriminate against that. My advice to you on how to counteract that, because I look older than a normal person. I'm only 34. I know I look older than that. Would be to not act like that age that they expect. And what I mean by that is if you're applying to a technology role, make sure that you're speaking their language. This is what we talk about in the concept of equal business stature. I belong, I deserve to be here. I belong to be here with you. So if I'm speaking that domain knowledge, that industry knowledge, I'm able to articulate the type of software, the tech stack that I use, and I demonstrate I'm an expert. I don't think ageism is going to really matter that much. I think that's a superficial quality. And if that company, by the way, that's the thing they're going to engage you on, they're doing you a solid, but you don't want to work for a company like that. I'm being honest with you. Those companies that care about superficial metrics, like how old this person looks, probably are toxic anyway. Go look at the reviews. So hope that's helpful.
100%. My biggest advice for ageism, if it's before the interview, right? I do recommend to a number of my candidates, like, listen, take the year off of when you graduated. If it was over 20, 30 years ago, take the year off. Just take the year off. Nobody cares. It's on there that you went to school. We know you went. Little things like that. Also, your resume, while it needs to tell your story, it doesn't have to have every single job you ever had from the day you were 16. People, if you send me another 7-page resume, make my eyes bleed, I'm going to die. Like, do not do that. The stuff that's relevant, that matters right now, that's important. And to Landon's point, and I will talk about a previous experience where I was hiring a manager when I was a regional sales manager. We dealt with a lot of employees who were young, right? They were 16, 17. It was their first job, and they all communicated in WhatsApp. And in the interview process, I would talk to the managers that were interviewing, and I would ask them, like, what's your knowledge with WhatsApp? And it was literally a question in my interview process. And I remember one of the candidates was like, oh my God, I hate notifications. I couldn't imagine, like, no. And it was like, okay, well, that's something that matters to our employees. So if that candidate, who honestly was a little bit older, right? If that candidate would have been more open to this new idea of, okay, my employees aren't always going to call me. Sometimes it's going to be a text message, right? That's where we're moving, y'all. Maybe they would have moved further in the interview process, but immediately it was like it was a no. That's something that's important to our other employees as well. And you don't necessarily know that. When somebody's asking you a question in an interview, they might be asking you a question because that thing is actually important. And you're giving a tell away when you say the thing that you're thinking. So think about that as well. Dean wants to know if we're seeing more on-site offers. Landon, are you interviewing for in-person, hybrid, remote? What are you interviewing for right now?
I actually only exclusively interview with remote-based offers. I don't even entertain on-site. Nothing against it. I like the office. I think the office is great. I worked at the office for years and years, but I have a lot more peace of mind working in my little bubble. With that being said, yeah, there's more companies now that are requiring more of a hybrid role. Um, you've just got to be able to filter through it. There's no practical advice that I could give you except on LinkedIn in the filters, look for remote opportunities. Make sure that's one of the things. If that's a deal breaker for you, make sure that's what you're applying for. Indeed, Glassdoor, you can type in remote and you can look at those type of opportunities.
Yeah,
If that's what you care about.
I'll add on to that. I am seeing from companies, just as a recruiter and doing biz dev working for myself now, I am seeing companies are more willing to work with a recruiter when they're filling these on-site or hybrid roles because people don't want to go into the office yet. People are still a little bit hesitant about going back to the office. So, and that's some advice I will give out. If you are having a hard time getting an interview, if you are willing to be in person, if you are willing to be hybrid, y'all, when was the last time somebody just showed up at your office? If they're in person, they're in their office. Go Google where their address is, y'all. It's not just picking up the phone. There's so many ways you can stand up and show out. And Dean also says that he never did a resume. His application was walk in, ask them to pull 10 leads. If I sell 3, you give me a job. If not, we'll shake hands and be friends.
Isn't that the nice times?
Yeah, right? That's awesome. Definitely remove years. So Sharon agrees. Lisa agrees with that as well. Okay, Gretchen says take the weight of the world off your resume. It's not relevant for the opportunity. It does not need to be there.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we covered a lot of interview do's and don'ts. And guys, we do need to end the show a little bit early today. So we're going to scoot right on into story-based selling. What is it? How do you do it, y'all? How do you sell using a story? Landon, let's jump in.
Yeah. So the concept around story-based selling is where you're strategically applying a story in order to articulate an idea. So if I have a customer story that I really want to tell to a customer, and I want to make sure that that customer has an idea, I say it's a very complex solution. It makes more sense for you to talk about the challenges that a customer just like them faced, and we guide the customer through that journey. And when we're doing the story-based selling, what we're really doing is we're weaving in these very complex ideas and articulating it in such a way to where everything is this big picture. And we're allowing the prospect to imagine themselves through this movie reel. So a prospect has this problem. This is what we did to resolve that problem, the solution. This is the outcome, the dream state of where we do. And the reason that I like story-based sales and why it is applicable in my world. So again, I work as account executive. I work for big data companies like ZoomInfo. I sold demo creation technology with Reprise. I'm selling very complex topics. And many times you only have a very finite window to demonstrate value in whatever it is that you're selling, whatever it is that you're doing. I'm able to interweave multiple perspectives using that story. And I think it's just one of the most powerful ways to be able to convey an idea in the way that you need to.
And I love what you said about movie. So when I think about it, when I'm talking to someone, a lot of people have main character syndrome, right? We are all our own main character in our own story. So by you using a story to really sell, you're putting them back as the main character, which will help you because people like to think of themselves as the main character. So there's a little bit of psychology in that as well, y'all. Story-based selling can be huge. I know I use it when I'm reaching out to hiring managers, trying to get them to work with me as a recruiter. I talk about my wins. I talk about times that like my client had a hard time in last December and look at what happened with their employees and look at the fall off. And y'all, 2023 is going to be about retaining your employees. Really quick, let me just throw in that little rant really quick. 2023 is going to be about retaining your employees too. It's not just about the new people because you've got people like me tempting big money in their DMs. And if you're not retaining your people, that's on you. So sorry, I know I went off on a little tangent. That happens.
Yeah. And the only thing to add to that is like with stories you can use stories whenever you're trying to sell yourself in interviews. You could use stories in order to build more value in the points that you're trying to make. If you are trying to articulate your experience, having a great story and specifically a customer story that you're able to walk that presentation through it's just so much more powerful. It adds, it's so flexible in what you're able to do. We don't have enough time to go over it, but I'm happy to go into a story at a later point.
Yeah, definitely, y'all. I know it's my fault. The show's got to be a little short today, but Landon is amazing. If you are not following Landon Hobbs on LinkedIn, please go follow Landon. Just always dropping great knowledge and literally like willing to shoot a DM with you, shoot the shit with you. Like Landon was one of those people that I'm always super impressed with how much he's also giving back to his network. So appreciate you for that. AP says, make sure you're having a two-way convo when interviewing. Yeah, AP, I know. Thank you for joining us. And I still owe you this bottle of hot sauce. I didn't ship it. I got home late. I'm sorry. That's my fault. I'll get it to you. But yeah, AP, we were talking about interviewing earlier. It's definitely a two-way conversation. And you are someone who has value. I think that's like my biggest takeaway from what Landon said is like, walk in there knowing that you have just as much value as the person you're talking to. You both wipe your butts with toilet paper. Guess what? Both of you the exact same way. Yeah. Hopefully. But you know what I mean, y'all. Like, it's not a scary thing, and it doesn't have to be scary. AP, I always think of an interview when I walk into an interview to kind of like make it a little easier for me. I think of when I'm checking out at the grocery store and I'm just kind of having like a casual conversation with that person, the cashier who's checking me out. And it's not something that has to be crazy. I'm going to sit there. I need to get through the small talk. And that's what I think of as the interview. It's a little bit of small talk with someone I don't know, but it's not something that has to be super stressful. So cool. Thank you for showing up, AP. Always happy to have you joining us. Yeah, AP was on. He won some hot sauce from me. And I actually was gifted this from Dooley. So shout out Dooley for this hot sauce that I'm going to ship over to AP. And then Jody won some hot sauce as well. So we're definitely going to give away some hot sauce. And maybe next week, I know y'all, next week we have Morgan J. Ingram coming on. So we'll give away some stuff next week as well. Okay, let's move into our third topic, objection handling. From interviews to cold calls, everybody deals with objections. I mean, y'all, you might deal with them in your dating too, if you're dating. So let's be honest. You could probably use this category for a lot of things, but let's talk about objections. What are objections that you've had to overcome recently in interviews, Landon?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is whenever you're dealing with any kind of objection doesn't necessarily have to equate to something negative. It doesn't necessarily have to equate to a concern. It's more about I am trying to understand. And you've got two main types of categories when we're dealing with objections. I don't understand the value or I don't see the value. And both of them at any point can be addressed the same way. So when we're talking about objections specifically, the way that you want to try to overcome the objection is actually you want to try to do preventative maintenance, right? We're trying to prevent the objection from coming up in the first in the first part of the scene. So one thing I'm going to tell you is, like, for example, like I've got a 10-month gap on my, or I have 10 months that I worked at Reprise at Zoom Info. I have another like 9 months is what it's showing there. And so what is the thing that they're going to say? Well, why does it show that you've only worked 10 months at this interview or at this company? Why does it only show you've worked 9 months at Zoom Info? Why are you looking? So you want to try to get ahead of that. So you want to make sure that you're planting what's called that landmine in advance. So one of the reasons I was at Reprise, I had these huge wins in the company, but the company was going through this massive explosive growth. And what ended up happening is half of the sales team was laid off as a result of their crazy growth, and leadership didn't know what they were doing. And the universe happened to find its way to Zoom Info. And I'm getting ahead of that objection as I'm explaining, for example, my experience. When I'm going through my experience, like, tell me about yourself, I'm actually leading them through why I left a particular position. And the reason I'm doing this, whenever I'm overcoming that objection, I know that it's going to be a conversation talking point that they're eventually going to talk about. So I get ahead of it. So that's you want to try to do what you can to alleviate or eliminate the potential obstacle when that happens. And it's just more powerful. It's frame control. I'm framing how I want that conversation to happen. Does that make sense for you?
100%. And another quick tip, y'all, on your resume, when you're thinking about laying out all of the things you did in your past job, right? right underneath where the company in your title, you can put a little sentence like in italics as to like why you moved on from that job. You can put it right on your resume. If you think maybe I'm not even getting to the interview because they're seeing these short stints or whatever, put it right on your resume. Like company went under, or company closed, or was recruited for such and such company, right? Like things happen, and if you can get a little bit ahead of it, like Landon is saying, right, that's one of the things for interviewing, is getting a little bit ahead of the game. That can help you deal with those objections. But I also want to talk about cold calls. We know you're amazing at cold calls. Landon already said you guys should be picking up the phone and calling people for these jobs, especially if you're going to go into tech sales. If you can't cold call and you're going into tech sales, you shouldn't be going into tech sales at all. And it doesn't mean that you need to be able to make a million calls a day. I just mean you have to have that confidence of, I can call a total stranger and have a 5-minute conversation, and it's fine no matter what the outcome is. I can call somebody and literally have them scream at me and hang up on me, and it's fine no matter what the outcome is. So let's talk about cold calls and some objections you deal with in cold calls.
Yeah, so it again, when we're looking at objections, it's going to bottle into effectively those two different kinds of categories. I don't understand the value, or I don't see the value. And that distinction matters. So a universal talk track that I love to play is, first, I'm going to bucket into whatever the objection is going to be. So if it's a time-based objection, like I call them, hey, I'm busy. I hear what you're saying. Let me just ask you a quick question. So this is a universal talk track where I'm going to validate what they say. I acknowledge that, hey, I'm a disruption to that day. So what that might sound like, it may sound something like this. Hey, listen, I completely hear what you're saying. I'm cold calling you out of the blue. I know that you weren't expecting my call. I just have a real quick question on, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on an observation. And I'm going to, what is it? Dismiss, ignore, move on, right? When we're talking about cold calls, I don't know how many of the audience here is actually in sales. The idea is that let's assume for a second you're in the store and you're shopping for clothes. Your knee-jerk reaction, even if you're going to that store, you have an intention of, I know I'm going to buy this item. If somebody comes up to you and they ask you, can they help you? Your knee-jerk reaction is say, no, I'm good, even though you want the help, even though I do want to buy something, right? It's that same psychology is still applicable on cold calls. So we have to ignore that trepidation that we have internally, where we feel that we're a disruption. If I'm coming to that person and I've done my research, I know I can help them, I'm going to come in with conviction. And when I come in with conviction, because I know that I'm able to help them, that objection handling is more or less, hey, I know I can help, just give me a couple seconds, right? So I've had a lot of success with that. There's a lot of ways to utilize it, though.
I love that. I think it's really important, y'all. You can't let that moment of feeling uncomfortable define the next step, right? I talk a lot to my audience about there's power in being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And I know that sounds like a mind fuck, but I really mean it. There's so much power when you can sit in an uncomfortable moment and the 5 other people in the room are like sweating ball. And you're just like, no, I'm fine. If you can feel that, take that feeling inside of you that Landon's telling you to ignore. Don't just ignore that feeling, but turn it into power for yourself, right? Like if you're feeling this, you're on the phone. Good. They picked up the phone. You got the call, right? Like change your mindset, make it positive, that growth mindset. We have to know we can do it. Just because somebody's giving you the objection doesn't mean that now you can think you can't do it. You have to believe in it. And I think that you make a good point of that as well.
Yeah, and I think also like when we're looking at objections, like hypothetically speaking, we're in a conversation, you're in a meeting, and it doesn't matter whether the meeting is going to transpose from an interview to a discovery call to just a normal conversation. I think what makes a lot of sense is I want to understand your perspective and where you're coming from. So if we're having a conversation and somebody gives you some kind of objection, try to clarify before jumping to a conclusion. So when we go back to like you're wanting to sell yourself in an interview, and somebody gives you a objection that we don't think you have enough experience, you may want to clarify with something like, well, what makes you think that I don't have enough experience? What is it about what I've talked about today that would give you that idea or that impression? And I want them to elaborate off of that. that elaboration allows us to have a more articulated answer that we're able to give them. And so a big aspect of objection handling, again, and I put this in big asterisks, is we're listening to understand. We're not listening to respond. And more often than not, when you're trying to do this objection handling, you want to listen to what it is that, why do they have that initial reservation, the apprehension? And it's just really important to be able to do that. And this, yeah.
I mean, if you are in a position, y'all, if you're in sales, drop in the comments. Let us know you're in sales. I kind of think that everybody's kind of in sales a little bit in some way, shape, or form. But if you are in sales, drop that in the comments below. I'm curious, have you ever used, AP is talking about the MEDDIC framework. Have you ever used the MEDDIC framework?
Yeah. Yeah, I use MEDDPIC anytime that I'm in a conversation. MEDDPIC isn't really, so MEDDPIC is, yeah, it's a framework, but it's more of a series of uncoverings that we try to gather throughout our conversation. And it's usually not going to be, you're not going to be given the metrics on the first conversation. You're not necessarily going to have the implication of pain on the very first conversation. Sometimes you will, right? The decision-making process, how does that look? You know, you may not necessarily know all the competitors. The idea around MEDDPIC or MEDDIC or whatever you decide you want to use is, this is what we do, what's called the CRM hygiene sniff test. I should be able to tell you what that prospect is, that company is, from the CRM. If you're able to cover up the name and your notes are super delicious, then you'll be able to know, it gives you insight into what's going on into the world of that company. And so even having that information, I think, is really important from a CRM perspective. If we're talking about like actual sales methodologies, challenger, spin selling, asking questions, that story-based selling that I was talking about, I think those are powerful ways to capture the imagination. I think that you've got to have these different types of methodologies, but no, MEDDPIC's great.
AP is actually, he says he's trying to get into sales. He is an aspiring SDR. What advice are you going to give AP right now?
So if you're, the big thing to understand for SDRs, AP, I'm assuming, do you have any, if you don't have any experience right now, you're just trying to get your foot in the door. The thing that these hiring managers are going to care about is, can AP articulate that he knows how to prospect? So what does an SDR do? They're a sales development representative. And what are they going to do? Their whole job is to prospect. So if you're trying to crack into an SDR position, you want to show the hiring manager that I'm going to prospect into your company the same way that I'm going to prospect when I want to win. So I'm articulating that I know how to execute. So my prospecting methodology, I'm going to talk about, here's all the tech stack that I'm familiar with. I know how to use ZoomInfo, or I can articulate that I know how to use ZoomInfo. I know how to use a contact data solution like Apollo. You're going to speak their language. Tech stack shows that I am a cybernetic Rambo, right? So I'm going to come in here. I have a step-by-step game plan on how I intend to execute. So I'm going to tell that hiring manager, we're going to do a top-down approach. I'm going to call C-level. I'm going to call VP. I'm going to call director level. I'm going to make sure that I'm calling their cell phone numbers. I'm going to make sure I have a process. If we have a step-by-step on what we intend to do. So when we're talking about the outbound email, it doesn't have to change. Outbound email is based off of what? A framework of personalization and templateization. So if we send an email, you want to personalize it. Show me you know me, right? It applies to interviews. Don't just copy and paste your nonsense. You want to make sure that you show that you're putting in the effort, put in there, you're rolling up your sleeves and putting in the work. That's what an SDR does. Your job is to get a response. If you can demonstrate to that person, the interviewer, whoever it is, that this is how I'm going to prospect, I'm going to demonstrate to you that I know how to close you, I'm going to be successful whenever I try to execute, when I sell for you, right? You can hit me up later if you want to be.
Love that. And quick shout out to Samantha McKenna. Show me you know me. She's amazing. I'm probably going to hit her up to come on the show. But yeah, y'all, Landon literally is just a wealth of knowledge, and AP always shows up. So super excited that you two might actually connect. Okay, y'all, we only have a few more minutes because I got to end early. We're coming into the fun topic of the day. Landon's going to stroke his beard for us. We're all going to talk about the beards of LinkedIn. So yesterday I made a post and I asked you all, who has the best beard on LinkedIn? And I want to talk really quick about some of the people who were nominated. Okay. Adam, Adam was nominated, and he had a very nice like Lenza picture, like these AI pictures. Have you your profile picture? Is an AI picture, right?
Oh,
Landon?
me? Yeah,
Yours?
sorry. Yeah, I was reading the comments. Yeah, mine's a AI based picture from Lenza.
Yeah, I'm seeing those everywhere right now. And it's so funny because when I made that post, who has the best beard, every single person posted a Lenza AI photo. And I hate Lenza, by the way, just so you know, I got a really bad experience
Yeah.
with them. But whatever, the pictures look cool for you all. If you all saw mine, you would understand. I'll never show the word like they're like that, y'all. It's that bad. I thought it was like a sick joke. I literally thought it was a sick joke. But the beard. So Adam was nominated. Landon's on here with his beard looking good. Topher showed like a picture of his. Cody popped in. Cody tagged like 10 people who all have beards. He even tagged somebody, a girl, Kelsey, for an honorary beard. Melissa Houston was in the comments a minute ago. She posted like a filtered beard thing. Like y'all are loving the beards. Is facial hair in for 2023 or is facial hair here
Own
to
it.
stay? What do y'all think?
No, it's coming back. This is the way of the tribe. I think you should embrace your inner beard. Everybody can grow a beard, and don't shy away from it. Everyone's beard is perfect just the way it is. But if you're able to grow it, own it. You know, this doesn't need to be in an old archaic dinosaur society where we have to have clean baby faces. All right, grow this bad boy out. This is good. So own it. It's part of my identity. I used to be. I have a very weak chin. Besides that, right? So it's my shield, and I get to knit a sweater from it when it gets really cold in the wintertime. So
Okay, your favorite products for your beard.
um, so I just use a combination of beard oil and beard butter, and I take a hair dryer and I will blow dry my beard and I comb it. And occasionally, like every few days, I will also like shampoo it with like beard stuff. But it takes like 5 minutes to actually do the work once you put the work in.
So do you know oh my goodness, Melissa just commented and I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me. The beards just throw me so much. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. So you know, like the day in the life of videos that we're seeing on TikTok right now, it's like day of the life of a SDR, whatever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want a day in the life of Landon's beard.
Well, it's like what sucks is like if I'm ever eating, if my beard gets too long, like the beard itself, like I'm trying to eat cereal and sometimes I get the spoon and I get unintended beard in my cereal. I don't like that.
Oh,
And like you have to be careful. Yeah, little things like this is a net for any like excess food. So I have to watch that. My daughter occasionally like she like, Daddy, you need to cut your beard. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't.
oh my
um, yeah, it's good. You gotta put in the work for it, but I like it.
AP says facial hair is always in. AP, where's yours? Where's yours, AP? Come on. Grow the beard. I want to see a beard like Landon on you in a year. Let's go. Okay, how long
Believe
does
in it.
it take you to grow your beard? Random fact, because I'm a girl and I don't know how long that takes.
About a year.
About a year for that bad boy.
Yeah, I grew it originally due to COVID, so I had the mask that I had to wear everywhere, and that was my opportunity. That hey, I want to take a new change, a new identity. This is going to be a new me, and so I took that opportunity and I just kind of ran with it. I'll tell you this: for anyone that is trying to grow a beard, just be patient. So it's itchy for the first month or two, but you very quickly get over it. My number one advice: get beard oil, and you every day massage that beard oil in your beard. Makes it way less itchy. Number two, comb it. That way it won't look so crazy. And that's like by far the worst part of it is that uncomfortable stage. If you are going to shave, trim up to the Adam's apple, right? Don't let it get all crazy, and don't trim the beard for the first like 3-4 months. If you are going to trim it, like you can trim up like the regular hairs and stuff. Be patient though. It's a process.
I love it. I love it. Beard. Is there any beard etiquette we should know?
Beard etiquette, it's a daily thing. Like I know a lot of men, you'll see like you think of like the biker beards, right? Go to the bars and they just got these like crazy long beards. A lot the main beard etiquette is like ask if you can pet their beard. Like, don't make this. I get this a lot where rando people will come up and they'll like stroke my beard. I don't usually have a problem with it, but occasionally I would like you to ask before you touch my beard. I'm probably gonna be. It's probably inviting. The other edit.
Just don't touch people without asking, y'all. Don't.
Yeah, well, just basic manners, right? Second thing, wash your beard because this stinks. If you don't take the time to, you like. So I see some guys, it's like all like ragged and nasty. Like you've got to clean your beard. Like this is still hair, same as this. You get oil, it's probably worse. It's like I wash mine every few days, but don't wash too much because this has natural oils, right? So that's where that comes in.
You're making.
I'm telling you, you can say ew all day. I don't care.
Oh,
don't get mad at me.
Gretchen said that nothing she tries works. She can't grow one. No fair. I guess she's been trying. I mean, Gretchen, I wish you the best of luck. We got to wind down. We got to do one last thing, y'all. I want to know from Landon, give me a fun Friday fact.
A fun Friday fact. Well, today, at the end of this conversation, I'm going to take that bike and I'm going to go ride. One of the things I love to do is I love to ride my bike. I think taking that, by the way, the only fact here, make sure you get your exercise in, everybody. If you haven't had a chance to do it, the world is very mean and cruel. You got to take that time to exercise. Biggest fact you can do for yourself, get that, make sure you're sleeping well, make sure your body feels good. And it's not really even a fact. It's just good for the soul, good for the mind, good for everything. So.
Really quick, Gretchen says not ew, like ew to people touching your beard, not ew to the beard. Ew to the people who come up and touch you without permission. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, it's yeah.
We don't like those people. And my fun Friday fact, I got my new sign out for you all, but this is why I work from home and I'm remote, because a large group of people is called a no thanks. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So we are going to wind it down. Next week, we have Morgan J. Ingram coming on the show. You guys got to check out. He does a live called Muffins with Morgan. If you're not watching Muffins with Morgan, you're missing out. So I'm going to give him a quick shout out. Shout out to Text Blaze, y'all. One of my brand partners, working with them. Thank you, Gretchen. I love that sign too. And y'all, it's been a fun Friday. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Go kick ass. Do something for yourself. You're worth it. You are important. You provide just as much value as anyone else. Bye, y'all.
Bye.